Have you ever wondered why love sometimes slips away just when it feels closest, as though an unseen force pushes it from your grasp? Most people believe the culprit is bad timing or the wrong partner, but the truth is far more intimate and unsettling. What you think is fate may in fact be your own shadow, the hidden side of the psyche that Carl Jung believed must be faced if we are to know real love. He taught that what we refuse to see in ourselves eventually stands between us and every person we try to hold. Picture a woman who longs for connection yet feels a quiet distance growing between her and those she meets. She tells herself it is chance, that others cannot match her depth, but beneath those words lie unacknowledged fragments of fear, pride, and forgotten pain. The shadow is not a villain lurking in darkness, it is the collection of everything we exile from awareness, old wounds, forbidden desires, the emotions we were taught to hide. When ignored, it acts like a silent magnet, pulling experiences that mirror what we deny. She walks into a room and men notice her grace, but they also feel an invisible tension. It is not hostility, it is a subtle charge that says, I will not be seen fully. Without knowing why, they hold back. This is projection at work, the shadow's quiet defense. Jung wrote that what we reject inwardly we inevitably project outward, creating illusions about others. Until these buried truths are met with courage, every spark of intimacy risks becoming a reflection of our own disowned parts. Perhaps you have felt it yourself, the sudden irritation when someone grows too close, the pattern of attraction to those who will not stay, the fear that kindness will trap you. These are not random quirks, they are messages. The shadow does not whisper in words. It speaks in repeated experiences, in the ache of relationships that almost but never fully arrive. Each encounter is an invitation to look inward, to ask what part of you is waiting to be acknowledged. Imagine standing before a mirror that does not flatter or condemn but simply reveals. To meet the shadow is to stand before that mirror and allow every hidden contour to emerge. It requires a courage deeper than seduction, a vulnerability beyond romance. It is the work of individuation, the journey toward wholeness that Jung called the true purpose of life. Without it, love remains a dance of masks, brief, dazzling, and ultimately unsatisfying. There is a paradox here. The very traits you hide may hold the key to the love you seek. The anger you suppress could become healthy boundary. The desire you fear might awaken vitality. The grief you bury may soften you into true compassion. When embraced, the shadow does not darken the heart, it enlarges it, making space for a connection that is not built on illusion. He senses this more than he understands it. A man drawn to a woman who owns her shadow feels an authenticity that words cannot imitate. Her presence is magnetic because it carries no hidden agenda. She does not pretend to be pure light, she radiates the wholeness of one who has walked through her own night. In her company he feels safe to lower his own defenses, to meet her as an equal soul. The path to such presence is not quick. It unfolds in the silence of reflection, in the honest confrontation with patterns repeated too often to ignore. But every step toward that inner meeting sends a signal the outer world can feel. Here is a woman who will not be defined by fear or pretense, who welcomes love. The shadow reveals itself not with thunder but in quiet repetitions, subtle echoes that return until finally acknowledged. She notices it in the relationships that begin with fire yet end in the same cold silence, in the friendships where admiration turns to unease, in the small habits of self-protection that masquerade as independence. These patterns are not random. They are the psyche's language, symbols rising from depths that demand attention. Jung taught that what remains unconscious will rule our lives and we will call it fate. Each recurring disappointment is an invitation, a knock at the locked door of her own unexamined heart. In moments of solitude she feels the tug of emotions she cannot name. A sudden flash of envy when another woman shines, a quiet resentment toward a man who offers genuine care, an irrational fear that tenderness will dissolve her strength. These are not weaknesses to be shamed but fragments of power waiting to be integrated. The shadow is not evil, it is life unlived, energy trapped in forgotten rooms of the soul. To deny it is to stay divided. To meet it is to become whole. When she finally allows these hidden feelings to surface, she discovers a paradoxical freedom. Anger, once buried, becomes the fire of clear boundaries. Desire, once suppressed, awakens creativity and embodied joy. Grief, once feared, softens her defenses and opens her to deeper compassion. Each reclaimed fragment returns with a gift. The shadow does not disappear, it transforms, adding depth to the light. This is the alchemy of individuation, the process by which a woman becomes more than a collection of roles and instead a living unity. Men sense this transformation long before they can articulate it. A woman who has embraced her shadow carries a quiet resonance, a steadiness that requires no performance. Her presence says, "I have met myself and survived." She is not seeking rescue and she does not hide her complexity. In her company a man feels permission to lower his own mask, to reveal the tender places he normally guards. Attraction deepens into recognition, he is drawn not to an image but to a truth. This magnetic quality cannot be faked. It is not the charm of calculated mystery but the gravity of authenticity. She does not chase, yet people move toward her. She does not demand, yet her words carry weight. The very energies once exiled now radiate as confidence and calm. Her laughter rings fuller, her silences feel intentional. Even her smallest gestures, a glance, a shift of posture, speak of a life integrated, a soul that has welcomed both night and day. For those who refuse this inner work, the opposite unfolds. The shadow remains unclaimed and leaks outward as projection. They blame lovers for the pain they will not name, repeat the same conflicts with different faces, and wonder why intimacy slips away. The world mirrors what the heart disowns. Until the hidden self is met, love cannot root itself deeply, it will always drift across the surface, seeking what we have not offered to ourselves. To walk the path of shadow is demanding, but it is the doorway to unshakable presence. It requires solitude, honesty, and the courage to witness emotions without fleeing. Yet with each step the inner walls crumble, revealing a strength. She begins to notice how the world responds differently as her shadow work deepens. Conversations feel richer, connections less brittle. Men who once approached with surface charm now find themselves pausing, sensing a gravity they can't quite name. It isn't seduction, it is alignment. Carl Jung wrote that when the unconscious is integrated, the self radiates a quiet authority. She is becoming that radiance, a woman who no longer hides behind the bright mask of perfection nor the dull armor of self-protection. The third sign emerges in subtle encounters. When someone provokes irritation, she no longer leaps to defend or deflect. Instead she asks, what part of me is reflected here? Old triggers that once dictated her reactions now serve as mirrors, revealing deeper truths. Envy becomes a guide to dormant desire. Jealousy uncovers forgotten wounds. Fear of abandonment points toward the tenderness she once buried. Each emotion, once feared, becomes a compass directing her inward rather than outward. This quiet courage has a physical presence. Her body language softens without losing strength, her eyes hold both invitation and clarity. She does not need to announce boundaries, they are felt in the steadiness of her gaze, the calm pacing of her words. A man senses it immediately, the difference between a wall built of fear and a boundary built of self-respect. The first repels intimacy, the second invites trust. He finds himself speaking more honestly, revealing thoughts he rarely shares, drawn by the safety of her authenticity. Around her, ordinary spaces take on a kind of charged stillness. A coffee shop hums with low conversation, yet when she walks in, the energy shifts almost imperceptibly. It is not appearance alone, it is the resonance of someone who carries both shadow and light in equal measure. She embodies what Jung called the coniunctio oppositorum, the sacred union of opposites. Men feel it as mystery, a presence that suggests depth beyond what the eyes can see. She, too, feels the change. Solitude no longer frightens her. In quiet moments she meets the parts of herself she once exiled, the ambitious child, the wounded lover, the restless dreamer. She greets them like long-lost companions, no longer demanding they behave or disappear. The more she welcomes them, the more whole she becomes, and the less she craves validation from outside. Love, when it arrives, will be a meeting of equals rather than a search for completion. He notices. Without understanding why, he senses that her acceptance of darkness makes her more luminous, not less. She does not chase affection, yet her very presence awakens pursuit. It is not the frantic chase of ego but the natural movement of admiration toward authenticity. He is drawn not to what she hides but to what she reveals, the courage to be entirely herself. This transformation is irreversible. Once a woman has tasted the freedom of self-integration, she cannot return to old patterns of pretending or pleasing. The shadow, once feared, becomes an ally. It sharpens intuition, deepens empathy, and strengthens resolve. She no longer fears rejection because she no longer rejects herself. The love she offers is not a plea but a gift freely chosen. Every encounter now carries a new. The fourth sign of the shadow's quiet mastery emerges in the way she now meets desire itself. Where once she feared that longing might consume or betray her, she now treats desire as a sacred messenger. Jung observed that eros, the life force expressed through attraction, becomes destructive only when repressed or hidden. She no longer hides it. A glance, a breath, the subtle spark in her smile, these are not strategies but natural expressions of vitality. Men feel the difference instantly. It is not seduction for approval, it is the authentic pulse of a woman alive to her own senses. Her relationship with power has shifted as well. Old habits of control, over people, outcomes, even her own emotions, are dissolving. She understands now that control is the mask of fear, while true strength is the courage to let reality unfold. In conversation she listens more than she steers, trusting the natural rhythm of exchange. This surrender is not weakness, it is the sovereign confidence of someone who knows her worth cannot be diminished by uncertainty. A man encountering this steadiness finds his own defenses softening. He senses that he is free to be real, that no performance is required. Around her, even conflict feels different. Tension does not escalate into drama, it becomes dialogue. She names her needs without accusation, sets limits without apology. This is the shadow transformed into clarity, anger no longer repressed, but refined into decisive truth. He feels the rare security of a boundary that protects both of them, the reassurance that her yes is meaningful because her no is unmistakable. Her empathy, deepened by shadow work, carries a new texture. She no longer offers comfort to earn affection or to escape her own discomfort. She offers it because she can hold pain, hers and another's, without drowning in it. In her presence, a man finds space for his own hidden grief. Without fanfare, she becomes a sanctuary where honesty feels inevitable. This quiet acceptance draws him more powerfully than any overt display of charm. There is also the radiance of creative chaos, the wild spark that resists prediction. One evening she might read in stillness, the next she might dance under streetlights with spontaneous delight. This unpredictability is not recklessness, it is the freedom of someone unbound by fear of judgment. It keeps the air around her charged, reminding anyone near that life is not a schedule but a living poem. He finds himself alert, inspired, alive. All of these qualities, the sensual openness, the fearless surrender, the balanced boundaries, the luminous empathy, the playful unpredictability, are facets of a single transformation, the integration of shadow. She is no longer a collection of contradictions, she is a living union of them. Light and dark, softness and strength, mystery and clarity, each flows into the other without seam. Jung would say she has begun to embody the self, the archetype of wholeness that contains all opposites. Men respond to this without conscious thought. They feel the pull of a presence that does not demand pursuit yet awakens it. The chase is not about conquest but about resonance, an urge to move closer to the truth she embodies. He may not know why he is drawn, only that her authenticity stirs the same possibility within him. Within herself she feels. The fifth movement of her transformation reveals itself in the way she now carries solitude. Once, quiet moments pressed against her like a threat, whispering of emptiness. Now they feel expansive, almost sacred. Jung believed that true individuation requires periods of aloneness, where the psyche can listen to its own hidden music. She inhabits these spaces without fear, and this calm self-containment radiates outward like a subtle fragrance. A man senses it immediately, she is complete in herself, and that completeness is irresistible. Her history, once a source of quiet shame or restless storytelling, has softened into wisdom. She no longer edits her past to impress or conceal. When she speaks of old wounds, she does so with a steady voice, as if describing weather long past yet still instructive. This acceptance transforms memory from a chain into a lantern. It lights the path ahead and illuminates the resilience that carried her here. He hears it and feels an almost physical relief, as though her honesty gives him permission to release his own ghosts. The body itself reflects this inner reconciliation. Her movements are unhurried but alive, a graceful economy that wastes nothing. Even in stillness she seems awake to every sensation, the brush of air across her skin, the quiet rhythm of breath. This presence turns ordinary gestures into quiet rituals, the way she lifts a cup, the way she tilts her head when listening. These are not calculated signals of allure, they are expressions of a spirit fully embodied. Men feel it as a current beneath the surface, an invitation to experience life more vividly. Her words, when they come, are chosen with care. She has shed the need to prove, to persuade, to win affection through cleverness. Speech has become an art of precision. A single sentence can carry the weight of a paragraph because it emerges from silence rather than anxiety. He finds himself listening with rare attention, drawn not only to the content but to the clarity of a mind at ease with complexity. Even her laughter bears the imprint of integration. It rises from deep within, unguarded yet never careless. It is the sound of someone who has befriended her own contradictions, grief and joy, strength and vulnerability, so completely that delight can spring forth without pretense. That laughter is contagious. Around her, people find themselves loosening, remembering the simple pleasure of being alive. This wholeness changes how she loves. She no longer seeks a partner to fill a void, she seeks one to share an overflow. Her affection is generous but never desperate. Boundaries remain clear, not as walls but as living edges that protect the sanctity of what she offers. A man who enters this space feels both the warmth of welcome and the respect of true freedom. He knows that her love, if given, is a conscious choice, not a reflex of need. The subtle magnetism of such a woman is difficult to name. It is not merely physical attraction, though beauty may be part of it. It is the resonance of someone who has embraced every hidden chamber of her being. Her shadow is not a threat but a source of depth, her light is not a mask but a natural glow. Jung might say she has begun to embody the self, the archetype of totality that calls others to their own integration. He senses all of this before he understands it. In her presence he feels. The sixth movement of her journey reveals a sovereignty that feels both ancient and immediate. Solitude, once a refuge she feared might become a prison, now stands as her chosen temple. Jung taught that individuation requires the courage to stand apart until the soul's true shape emerges. She stands there now, whole, luminous, unthreatened by the absence of applause. Men sense this before they can name it, the quiet power of a woman who belongs entirely to herself. Her emotions, once managed like volatile storms, have become trusted guides. Anger no longer hides behind politeness, it rises and settles with the dignity of an honest tide. Sadness is no longer exiled to secret corners, it flows openly when it comes, carrying renewal in its wake. Even joy has changed, deepened from fleeting excitement to a steady flame. He feels it when he looks into her eyes, a vitality that has no need to perform. The old patterns of projection fall away. When irritation stirs, she no longer blames or flees, she listens. Each trigger becomes a compass pointing toward some undiscovered piece of her inner landscape. What once seemed like conflict now feels like revelation. She recognizes the faces of her own shadow in every encounter, welcoming them as teachers. This willingness to meet herself disarms others. A man drawn into her orbit finds his own defensiveness dissolving, as if her openness grants permission to be real. Her body speaks the language of integration. Shoulders relaxed, movements unforced, she walks as if gravity itself were a dance partner. Even silence becomes expressive. A turn of the head, the pause before a reply, these gestures carry the weight of authenticity. He experiences them not as calculated signals but as evidence of a soul in harmony with itself. It is magnetism without effort, allure without strategy. She creates spaces where depth becomes inevitable. A simple dinner, a walk at dusk, even a shared moment in a crowded room, each is charged with the electricity of presence. People feel seen around her, not because she tries to see them, but because she has learned to see herself. The integration of shadow has sharpened her intuition into something almost luminous. She notices subtleties, a fleeting hesitation, an unspoken longing, and responds with a compassion that neither invades nor withdraws. This balanced empathy reshapes the idea of love. She no longer offers herself as a remedy for another's wounds, nor does she seek someone to heal hers. Love, for her, is a meeting of equals, a choice renewed each day. In her presence a man senses freedom rather than obligation. He is drawn not by need but by recognition of a shared truth, that intimacy thrives only where two complete beings meet. Her laughter rings deeper now, rich with both mischief and wisdom. It carries the memory of darkness faced and transformed, the triumph of someone who has walked through fear and returned with treasure. It is not the bright laughter of distraction but the resonant sound of liberation. He cannot help but join in, feeling the subtle alchemy of joy that requires no performance. Around them the world takes on a sharper clarity. Colors seem more vivid, sounds more intricate. Ordinary moments, a breeze through an open window, the low murmur of night, become reminders of the sacred hidden in the everyday. He realizes that her presence does not merely attract, it awakens. The seventh movement unfolds like the hush before dawn, when the world is poised between shadow and light. She stands in that threshold effortlessly, no longer torn between who she was and who she is becoming. Jung believed that individuation is not the victory of light over dark but their marriage, and she embodies that sacred union. Her life is no longer a search for halves to complete her, it is the quiet radiance of a whole being. The way she holds presence is almost otherworldly. In conversation she is fully there, eyes steady, breath unhurried, yet there is a glimmer that hints at infinity. She listens as though each word matters, but also as though she can hear what remains unspoken. People feel it instantly. Here is someone who sees beyond surface narratives, someone who can sit with contradiction without rushing to resolve it. A man senses both safety and challenge in that gaze. It invites him to drop his own pretenses, to reveal the tender truths he guards. Her relationships now mirror the integration she has achieved. Friendships deepen, old conflicts dissolve, and even brief encounters carry resonance. She no longer gravitates toward those who replay her wounds, because the wounds have lost their hidden command. She can love without clutching, release without resentment. To the outside world this looks like calm confidence, but its roots are deeper, a soul no longer ruled by the unseen. This wholeness transforms the very air around her. She may enter a crowded cafe or walk a quiet street, yet the atmosphere bends subtly in response. People glance up without knowing why. It is not a display of power, it is the unmistakable vibration of authenticity. Jung wrote that when the self emerges, others feel it as numinous, holy and magnetic at once. She has become that living archetype. He feels it as a quiet urgency, a pull that is not lust but recognition. Something in her presence stirs the anima within him, the inner feminine that yearns for balance. Without words, she calls it forward. He is not chasing her body, he is following the path she illuminates toward his own hidden wholeness. This is why the attraction feels inexhaustible, it is not about possession but transformation. Her creativity blooms from the same source. Ideas flow in the kitchen as easily as in solitude, color, movement, and sound seem to find her. She no longer measures her art against approval. Expression has become devotion, a celebration of the life force she once tried to tame. Even mundane acts, a handwritten note, the way she arranges a room, carry the signature of someone who lives awake. This quiet artistry becomes another form of magnetism, drawing others not to imitate but to remember their own forgotten imagination. There is still mischief in her smile, a playful spark that keeps everything alive. Seriousness does not harden her, wisdom has only made her lighter. When she laughs, it is the sound of someone who has walked through storms and found joy on the other side. It reminds everyone near that freedom is not the absence of struggle but the embrace of it. Through it all, she asks nothing. She does not seek to be chosen, nor does she chase. Her love, if it unfolds, is a meeting of equal. The eighth movement rises like a slow dawn inside her own heart, a luminous calm that no longer depends on circumstance. What once felt fragmented has fused into quiet strength. Jung described this state as the self-emerging, the ultimate integration where every exiled fragment returns home. She lives now as a whole constellation, each former shadow transformed into a star. In her presence, time loosens its grip. A simple walk across a room becomes a small ceremony. Even silence carries weight, like the pause between notes in a symphony. People sense it before they understand it. Conversations with her leave an afterglow, as if some hidden door has been nudged open. This is not charisma in the usual sense, it is the resonance of someone who has reconciled the worlds within. Her love of solitude has matured into something sacred. She no longer seeks distraction when alone, she listens. Dreams arrive with vivid clarity, guiding her toward subtle truths. Morning rituals feel like dialogue with the unseen. This intimacy with her own depth spills into every interaction. When she speaks, her words carry the calm authority of someone who has touched the eternal and returned to tell of it. The world mirrors her transformation. Relationships become less about proving and more about presence. Those who meet her feel permission to drop their own defenses. Men, in particular, experience a strange combination of comfort and exhilaration, as though being near her awakens a nobility they had forgotten. They are not drawn to conquer but to remember themselves. Her body reflects this inner freedom. Movement is neither rushed nor deliberate, it flows like water guided by hidden tides. She dresses not to impress but to express the quiet poetry of her spirit. Even the way she lifts a cup or tucks a strand of hair carries an elegance that asks for nothing and offers everything. He notices without knowing why, responding to a magnetism beyond the reach of strategy. She is unafraid of mystery now. Questions about the future do not tighten her chest, they spark curiosity. She trusts the rhythm of life the way the ocean trusts the moon. This faith is not naive but earned through confrontation with her own darkness. It shows in her eyes, clear, luminous, unclouded by the need to control. He sees that clarity and feels an almost involuntary respect. When conflict arises, she moves with remarkable steadiness. There is no scramble to be right, no retreat into silence born of fear. She names truth with gentleness and power, holding space for another's perspective while remaining anchored in her own. Boundaries have become an art form, neither rigid nor porous but alive. A man in her presence feels the rare safety of a connection that honors freedom on both sides. The laughter that escapes her now holds the entire spectrum of her journey, sorrow-faced, joy reclaimed, the mischievous spark of someone who has danced with shadow and survived. It is laughter without pretense, and it draws others like music draws dancers. In that sound is the subtle invitation to live more fully, to embrace the beauty and terror of being human. Through it all, she asks for nothing more than authenticity. She is not waiting to be chosen, she has already chosen herself. Love, when it comes, will be celebration, not completion. The ninth and final movement arrives like the hush after a long symphony, a serene completion that vibrates long after the last note fades. Night and day within her are no longer adversaries but dance partners. What was once hidden in shadow has stepped fully into light, and the light itself now carries the depth of shadow. Jung would call this the Konjunktio, the sacred marriage of opposites. She simply calls it peace. Her presence no longer seeks to impress, and therefore it impresses without effort. People feel it before they see her. Conversations with her seem to stretch time, each word carrying a quiet inevitability. The magnetism is not in her appearance, though beauty may follow, but in the unmistakable signal of wholeness. She embodies what others yearn for without realizing it, the freedom to be entirely oneself. When love approaches, she welcomes it with open hands and an open horizon. There is no hunger for validation, no grasping to possess. Affection flows toward her because she does not chase it. A man feels this truth immediately. He senses that her heart is an invitation, never a bargain, a choice, never a trap. The impulse to pursue her is no longer about conquest but about resonance, the desire to meet her as an equal soul. Her shadow, once a secret adversary, has become a lifelong ally. Every former wound now serves as a source of wisdom. The anger she once suppressed has become the fire of discernment. The grief she once buried has turned to compassion. The desires she feared have awakened a creative force that colors everything she touches. These energies move through her seamlessly, a living proof that darkness, when embraced, becomes a deeper kind of light. Even the world around her responds. Strangers offer genuine smiles. Friends linger a little longer in her presence. Nature itself seems to meet her halfway, breezes soften, light bends warmly. Yet she clings to none of it. The outer harmony is simply an echo of the inner integration she has already claimed. He notices it most in her stillness. Sitting across from her, he feels his own heartbeat slow, his thoughts clear. The old games of pursuit and performance lose their meaning. What draws him is not mystery for its own sake but authenticity. He realizes that the real chase is inward, toward the self she mirrors. To be with her is to be invited into wholeness, not to capture it but to remember it within himself. She moves through life now with a grace that is both grounded and ethereal. Every gesture, pouring tea, opening a door, laughing with a friend, carries the quiet assurance of someone who has made peace with every part of her story. There is no rush, no fear, only presence. The woman who once feared rejection now understands that nothing real can be lost. And so the circle closes. What began as the painful work of confronting the shadow ends as a luminous completeness. She does not need to chase love because she has become love's natural home. When a man chooses her, it is not to fill a void but to share a journey. When she chooses him, it is from fullness,